Hello, and welcome to Givey Connect Plus, a podcast series where we talk to local charities in the UK and put the spotlight on their exciting projects and initiatives. I'm your host, Fiza Surhio, and our guest for today is Neil Mehta, CEO of Givey, trustee of Frederick's Foundation, and chair of WaterHarvest. For 30 years, WaterHarvest has worked with 1.6 million people in 1,562 villages to harvest 1.3 billion liters of water. They have led the way in sustainable water sources that work with the natural environment and provide benefits for the entire community, particularly women and girls, who are often forgotten. WaterHarvest has made it its mission to work with the most disadvantaged people in the most desolate areas to provide a sustainable water source that truly makes every drop count. A very warm welcome to Neil. Thank you so much for joining us today in this episode of Givey Connect Plus. Can I please ask you to start us off by introducing yourself, the work that you do, and the various projects that you have been involved in over the last couple of years?
Thank you. A very good introduction. Thank you very much. My name is Neil Mehta. I've been in the technology world for a long time, since I graduated, but the last 20 years or so, I've been spending more and more time in doing either tech for good projects or involved in philanthropic work. And on that side, I have been a trustee and a fundraiser and a volunteer, all kinds of roles I've done over the last 20 years. One particular charity in UK, which is called Frederick's Foundation, and that does coaching and mentoring and providing a bit of funding for highly disadvantaged people to get back on their feet and get into self-employment and promote self-esteem and so forth. We've been doing for 20 odd years in the UK. And then I've been involved in WaterHarvest for the last 4 or 5 years. Prior to that, I was involved in a charity which was building safe schools for children in East Africa and Nepal and Cambodia. So I've been involved in some shape or form in sustainable ways of creating education and safe environments. And WaterHarvest is a charity that's been around for 30 years, as you said. And I came in through a phase of change, I suppose, to the next reiteration of doing the good work that they do. So I think that's kind of a quick summary, basically, of who I am and what I'm doing, basically, whatever. Yeah. I hope that helps.
Okay, thank you so much. Obviously, you've been involved in WaterHarvest for the past couple of years, and when I was going through the Givey page of WaterHarvest, I saw quite a few projects, both private fundraisers and also one of the biggest, I think, projects that is with WaterHarvest, which is called the Monsoon Promise Appeal. And I mentioned this one in particular because when I was reading through the mission of WaterHarvest, this project was really like on the focus for the overall mission of WaterHarvest. And obviously it's still ongoing and it's got one of the biggest fundraising targets. So if you could just tell us more about this project in particular, the story behind it and some of the motivations that went behind crafting this project and where you've gone through so far.
Okay. Just a bit of context on WaterHarvest from a point of view of why it exists. And if I just describe that most of the semi-arid desert regions around the world, and in particular in India, it's in the north, Rajasthan, Gujarat, and when you go across that area, the rainfall is normally no more than anything between 2 weeks to maybe 2 months maximum in a year. So I think that context people need to understand that's the only time it rains. So to be able to capture that just for drinking alone is good enough for that region. So that's one context in terms of topology or whatever the climate and so forth. The second one is that unfortunately or fortunately culturally, it's actually the girls and the women who actually go and fetch water, basically. And some of these places that they fetch water, you're talking about some kind of facts and figures for you, or whatever. Rural women walk an average of anything between 3 to 5 miles a day just to fetch water, every day. So if you can imagine, if that is the life of a child or girl, by the time they're 16 or whatever, they get married and they carry on until they die. So to me, it's a lack of, that's a prison at the end of the day. They've got no way of getting out of that cycle. So that's one of the reasons why this appeal that we're talking about is an ongoing appeal, because we've got that. If you multiply the number of villages and so forth, we're just scratching the surface. So it's an enormous kind of area or whatever. And then the other thing is obviously that when they do, when you calculate the numbers or whatever, a third of their life is actually just walking and fetching water, all their life. So I think the work we do just by creating a water harvesting system, roof water harvesting system, a decent monsoon that can capture about 21,000 liters in a tank, basically. And that's enough clean drinking water alone, just clean drinking water for a family of 4 to 6 people for a whole year. And that's the difference.
Yes, thank you so much. That's such an amazing story. And it's so much lost productivity, and these girls might have so much potential. And it's amazing that you guys are working on it. Thank you for sharing with us that story. So just coming into the donation parts of it and offering support and contribution, just in terms of that, is it simply restricted to monetary support, or is there other ways that people can perhaps contribute to this amazing mission of WaterHarvest?
There's a number of different ways, but obviously for a small charity, donations is the lifeblood, basically. And we get donations in a number of different ways. So, we get legacy donations. People leave us legacy. People who've known us for a long time. There are regular donors who give us monthly direct debits and so forth. Then we have trusts and foundations who are specifically targeting international development and so forth, who give us funding. And then we've got, obviously, through fundraising events, whether it's, walking, cycling, whatever. So those are the kind of combination of things that we do from a donations point of view. Then we have a lot of volunteers who do events for us. So people who do book clubs and, fundraising for quizzes and dinner nights and cakes and church festivals, etc. So we've got that as an extra thing that people do. And then we've got volunteers who just purely visit the schools on our behalf locally and talk about what we do, what work we do, universities in terms of talks and so forth. So there's other bits of volunteering that people can do, whatever. And we have in the past actually taken students to do water walks on these amazing step wells and things that you have in India, which is hugely going back 15,000 years or whatever, so some amazing things that are there. And we get people who go and visit our projects basically off their own accord because that's what they want to do. So there's lots of different avenues, and probably the kind of new area we're getting a lot of younger people involved or whatever is obviously because of the digital, everyone going digital, whatever. So we've got them volunteering to help with, creating some social media presence and, helping us promote our stories and, create videos and things like that, whatever. So there's lots of these things which are old, but also some new things or whatever. So yeah, it's kind of a participation depending on, what kind of things that they are willing to do. One of the key elements is that we're not a big organization. So whoever volunteers should be able to roll their sleeves up and actually be, proactive in helping us do that, because, we're a small team basically. So it's not about, that, oh yeah, you just kind of tell us what to do and we're going to do it. We haven't even got the manpower. So it's kind of active involvement is the main thing.
Excellent. It really sounds like there's so many different avenues that people can get involved in this amazing project. So that was absolutely great to hear as well. So obviously you said before that this is like an ongoing appeal and not just like a limited time, but we're continuing this for the long term. So is there like a deadline that you want to raise these funds by, or people can just continue showing support along the way and just donating along the way, and there's not like a specific deadline that you're aiming for this particular project? And if you could just elaborate on that as well.
Sure. So just again, I'll just put a context. The reasons I'm going is that we are talking about a roof water harvesting system costs about £300, $400, and that's kind of a lifetime of water. It literally is. For that, you're each one of them creates a family of 4 to 6 individuals coming out of that poverty, if you like, of water and having clean water. So I think the appeal is ongoing because the particular purpose is huge in terms of what the need is, basically. So I don't think that is something that we're going to, even maybe, resolve in my lifetime, because of the sheer scale of it. And we are only talking about Rajasthan and Gujarat, which is 2 states of the whole of India. That there are lots of other areas we are not even there, basically, or whatever. So that's just that aspect or whatever. And then obviously part of the monsoon appeal also is that we eventually, when we release the girls from not fetching water or whatever, an amazing thing happens or whatever, because they go to school. They suddenly are free to go to school and get education, and the journey that happens after that is is amazing, basically, because that's something that we can maybe talk about or whatever. I've seen that journey all the way through in the last 5 years, of what change that has made to the girl, the women, the men, the whole of that generation, in terms of how it changes in being from the poorest to the poor to being self-sustaining, to being able to actually make some cash crops to actually be able to afford to send their kids to so-called semi-private schools, or go a bit further away. In India, there's no such thing as private schools, but these enabling things that happen, and that change happens dramatically as soon as they've got that freedom, basically, of time, basically, which is the key.
Absolutely. It's amazing. Yeah, just like you said, it's the sheer scale of it, and hopefully this mission like spreads out towards the other areas, and these girls can definitely get the much needed education, of course. So thank you so much for that. And moving on from this, we're just going to go deeper into your work a little bit and go into the nitty-gritty details about some of the challenges and the obstacles that you faced over the years. Obviously, it's such a huge project, and it's not possible that you wouldn't have encountered some setbacks. So starting off from when the project first started, and also to the most recent events, if you could just tell us some of the obstacles that you faced and how you overcame them, and perhaps some of the advices or some of the learning experiences that you'd like to share with the people, and if they could learn something from your experience as well. So huge journey. So lots of questions, but yes.
Oh, blimey. We only got half an hour. My word. Okay, I think I'll start with a statement of the conclusion, and then maybe go into the various things you talked about. So one of the key principles that I've learned is actually don't I'll call it, paraphrase it, don't cut and paste. So we sometimes think in the West that we know really well. We know technology, we know how to do things, and we're innovators, we know the process and systems. So one of the key elements is that if you try to do that, that's a big learning I had. The system, bang, cut and paste it and it will work. it doesn't, because one of the key ingredients here missing is a the cultural dimension, basically, and the second one is that they themselves have such phenomenal knowledge that's been handed down from generations, and that is as good as us coming with some technology to say, "Oh, this is good practice." So I think one of the big lessons is that, don't just come and say dictate, or just say this is best and this is how it work, and listen to the forefathers who told them how to. They were there centuries ago. That was desert, and they survived and created their own water systems. To be frank with you, water harvesting. It's just we've forgotten. That's all. And the second thing is that, take the cultural dimension into place or whatever. So, really simple things. To give you an example or whatever, we build this underground tank with the water harvest from the roof water going into the tank. And one of the things is that you want to keep it clean around it as much as you can, because obviously there's dust and whatever. And it's quite interesting that, you can tell them whatever, but ultimately a lot of them are uneducated and they don't understand, that contamination and, that those kind of things. But each cultural dimension that he says or whatever. So in one place of Rajasthan, they really respect trees or whatever. So you plant the tree they respect near the water source or whatever, and they'll keep it clean because they have to keep it clean because it's religious or whatever. In another place, is a deity or a statue that you put that in the tank or whatever, it would be spotless or whatever. So it's kind of just as an example, learning that look, there's ways of doing these things or whatever, which is not just a piece of paper to say this is health and safety and this is what you need to do. So you take that into account or whatever. So I think that's one thing or whatever. Another thing is the remoteness. You don't really appreciate the scale of the remoteness or whatever. One of the places we do a project is in Kutch in Gujarat or whatever. It's 100 kilometers of nothing until you get to this kind of oasis or whatever. So trying to understand that you can't, again, what you might do, in the east of Rajasthan to what you do on the west of Rajasthan across the whole state, is very different. Some land is totally salty, so you can't even, whatever, the water kind of facility, or some is mountainous and rocks and porous rocks, or whatever. So all these aspects is within one state, let alone the country, do that basically. And that from a Western point of view, even I kind of find it quite alien sometimes that, look, it's very much that way around or whatever. But the other flip side is, as soon as the water is in the house and not 5 miles away, it changes dramatically or whatever. And the women become all powerful, basically, from point of view of change, very proud of their little area of their house, and the girls going to being educated, them forming user groups, and they get together automatically, very entrepreneurial. They will start to support each other and create ways of saying, oh, well, we've got some free time, can we do something, can we weave something, what can we do? So they're asking then, when we're there, tell me, well, what can we do? So you're kind of liberating this creative process and a thought process of them being able to look outwards and for the betterment of the whole. As always, they are the ones, who are making sure that unit is really, really functional and so forth or whatever. So I think those are the kind of things or whatever. There's always issues that the monsoons, it sounds as if it's regular, but it isn't in any particular 5-year period. You could have 2 very good years and 2 bad years and 1 okay year, and that alone is quite dramatic, basically. So it's not as if it's regular every year, So that has a huge impact as well, because if they don't get any water, any rain, then they are actually at the mercy of loan sharks who actually sell them water, basically, to buy, which they can't afford, and then they borrow money and they get in that vicious cycle, basically, or whatever. So there's a lot of dimensions on in what very simply creating just enough water to drink suddenly releases all these different tensions in the system, if you like, for them to be actually then be in a place where they start to be self-sustaining, from then on, basically, or whatever. So I think those are some examples of some of the things that have happened, or the observations about how we go through this cycle of what we're doing for, call it the monsoon appeal, basically, that's specifically this. And then from that, there's all kinds of other things that we do, drip irrigation, and then, they do their own food and vegetable growing, and then they expand into doing it so they can sell some of it, and et cetera, et cetera. So it kind of evolves over a period of time. And I've seen that now in the last 4 or 5 years, all of those things happening, basically, or whatever. And there's a dramatic shift in what happens in their self-esteem and what they can do and so forth, or whatever, from that point of view. And the men change as well, slowly, they change as well, eventually.
Absolutely. There's so many amazing and relevant points that you raised in that, and definitely the idea about don't cut and paste. I truly hands-on agree with that idea. So thank you so much for sharing with us that. Um, and lastly, for your the journey that you've gotten so far, it's obviously a huge learning experience for everyone that's
Yes.
involved in this project. And just we'd like to gain something from that experience as well. So if you could perhaps share with us one quote or one motto that you took away from partaking in this initiative, or perhaps any quote or motto that you live by as you work alongside WaterHarvest, and if you could just share that with us.
Um, I think, I think, um, I think I've always liked Gandhi as a principle in terms of what he stood for, and some of the things that he said. You know, um, you must be the change you wish to see in the world. So I think that really is a very powerful thing from my perspective. That kind of the motto of being that, you know, um, and I kind of interpret it slightly differently because that was for that time, and I'm very much always conscious of, moving on with the times or whatever. But that kind of resonates. But something that I kind of thought about, because I'm in the technology world basically, so kind of applying it to the modern day, it's like live for what's worth dying for, and leverage technology to create the world you wish to see. So that's my modern version of something that he's just talked about, because we get away from that. We are, your generation is totally technology, embracing, basically, and I think that needs to be the way that I interpret this in the context of today, basically. So I think that would be what I would say. That's kind of, and I think the kind of the statement of Water Harvest, or the tagline, every drop counts, says everything, about what it is about. Every drop is precious, every drop, when you don't have it on your tap, basically, so that's kind of is very much the essence of Water Harvest. But anyone who has lack of water in any shape or form, the basic need that is God-given right for everyone to have for free without money. So I think that's kind of the kind of things that are kind of the core of the work, and how this whole thing really kind of clicks in us being able to be mission driven, basically.
Absolutely, making every drop count and also keeping up with the times. Both of them really great mottos, and thank you for sharing that with us. And just looking on from here onwards, just your journey ahead, is there particular projects that you're eyeing at the moment, you're working on at the moment, or some short-term goals that WaterHarvest wants to achieve? So if you could share that with us as well.
Well, we want to take what we've learned for 30 years to other parts of the world. So hopefully, one of the exciting things is that we're going to go into Africa. So we are looking at where we want to be very focused, in the sense that when we say Africa, we mean everything that is just below the sub-Saharan desert, that below the desert, all the countries that sit in that zone. So again, stick to the knitting of that we are specialists in a semi-arid environment, and that's where our skills and 30 years of experience based from. And we want to take some of that knowledge and then take Africa. So we hope to be doing some projects, trial projects this year in Africa, and take that local community. So one of the key elements is we work with local people in the local community in each area. So we're not, again, we're not the big kind of Oxfam type of scenario. We are really very much interested in the indigenous population. So even again in India, whatever, if you go to any of these villages or whatever, they're quite different. They're quite multicultural. They're quite different in the way. And we believe the same thing in Africa. When we go to the local NGO that works in the locality, in the language, etc., etc. So I think we want to take, like literally helicopter some of the learnings that we've done from India, and we're trying to digitize a lot of that information, so because we can actually take that and then implement it on the ground in Africa. So that is probably the exciting kind of project that this coming year that we are looking at, and then obviously continue the work in India that we're doing, and maybe take that into some other territories of India as well, if we can, basically, or whatever. So I think those are the kind of two key things, and obviously technology, again, digital plays a part in how we communicate and how we tell the story of these things, and that's another agenda item to kind of connect a modern way of being able to scale this a way that is still effective, on the basis that we as a charity, I'm very proud to say that we over 80p, 83, 84 pence in a pound that's given by a donor goes straight to the ground or where it belongs or whatever. So our cost of running the operation needs to be as low as possible, basically, because I've been a donor. I'm sure everyone has been a donor, but you want to know how much of that actually gets to where it's supposed to have got to, and you want to cut out any of these wastage or any of these huge costs of running these kind of things, from a point of view that's what a donor is paying for, all the time, and sometimes that transparency is not there. So I'm very focused on that, making sure that we continue to have that transparency and collaborative way of working with all our stakeholders or whatever. So it's not about just the donor, it's just not about the receiver, it's all about the whole community, how we all interact and that it's done in a transparent way. So I think that kind of is the mantra in terms of kind of carrying this forward, basically.
Absolutely. And they all sound like very exciting projects. And just about the one that you said, to shifting it to Africa, all the very best for that. And I hope all of the successes come your way, and WaterHarvest continues to flourish, and its mission, and it's helping lots of girls and those women out there. So all the very best of luck to you for all of your future adventures. Thank you so much for your time today, Neil.
Shit and whatever.
It's been a wonderful.
No, Faiza, you're doing. I think you're doing some phenomenal work, and I'm so blessed. Basically, so blessed. Basically, so thank you very much. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
And on that note, we would like to conclude this episode of Givey Connect Plus. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in today. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Givey Connect Plus. We will be returning with another episode with another special guest very soon, but until then, goodbye and take care.